Hi folks, and welcome to the channel. And in this video we're gonna make some 90s death metal, so let's check this out. So yeah, recently entered a competition on, it's called Rate My Mix, and it's in association with Coley Keller Studios, or Coley Keller Audio Cult, Coley's Audio Cult, and Produced Like a Pro with Warren Hurt. And this particular song is by a band called Malamor. I don't know if they're still around, they possibly might be. It's not a band I came across at the time. As you know, I'm a big fan of old school death metal, and this was recorded in a proper old school way. All the band in a room together, straight into a console, straight onto tape. And the song itself is called Dead to the World. So we'll have a quick listen to the song, and then I'll go through all the processing that I've done on this. So there's a quick brief listen at the song. The way I'll do this is, first off, we'll have a look at the drums. We'll have a look at each of the individual drums, the submix, and any sends and automation. Then we'll have a look at the bass, the guitar, and then the vocals. There's no extra effects on here. First of all, let's solo these drums out. Quite minimal miking for the kick, so we've got two kicks, obviously mic'd up separately, and then an extra mic for the kicks. We've got one snare, which I'm presuming is on the top, 3 toms, hats, a couple of overheads, and a couple of room mics. That's it. And let's have a listen at how they sound on their own. So, first of all, even though this was mixed through a console, I decided to put a console emulator. I'm using the A console from Summoners. So this is on the master track, master fader, 2 boost, whatever you want to call it, and just add a little bit of saturation in there. And then after that, I've got the Slate digital mix rack. All I'm using is the mix bus, using the SSL master bus compressor. This is the actual SSL one. Bit of tape saturation, and then just a slight little bit of EQ. That's what I've got on the master bus. But we'll come back to them when we get towards the end of the mix. So on the 2 kicks, let's get to a first sort of double bass part, double kick part. So we'll solo each one of these out. Oops, because they do sound a little bit different. So this is I think this is the main kick. This is one on the right. Which I do quite like that kick. That's got a nice sound to it. But the other one sounds slightly different. Now, whether they were tuned slightly differently, I'm not 100% sure. Like I say, first off, I've got the A console up there, so that's going across all the tracks, and the stem tracks as well. I've not put them on the submixers, I've just put them on the stem tracks. Like I say, that's just to add a little bit of extra console emulation. And then on the kicks, I'm using a Slate digital. Now, originally I was using the virtual channel, but I tried the New York one instead, just to add a little bit extra saturation. I was liking what it doing, so I decided to go with that one. Just turn the saturation down a little bit, gone onto the console, pushed, and I've not done anything with frequencies there, just left them as is. On the actual EQ, just got a couple of EQs going off here, just taking a little bit of 1.25k out on that one, and then a little bit of around about 280, and then I've just boosted a little bit at around about 60 hertz, and I've done that on a bell filter rather than a shelf. A little bit of compression. Let's solo the drums out again. So on the compression, just got its standard 4:1. So have a look, see how much gain reduction we've got going off there. About 5 to 7 dB, not a great deal. After that, just got the revival, just adding a little bit of thickness and a little bit of shimmer, and just as a bit of a buffer, the trimmer. I don't think I really needed to do anything with that. Yeah, it's going in, but it's not hitting red on there, so it's fine. On the second kick, very, very similar processing. So, like I say, we've got that using the same New York saturator, but on the EQ, it's slightly different. We're just taking a bit of 2.8k out, 1.25k, and the same 200 hertz, and then giving it a bit more of a low end boost. We've boosted the low end a little bit more, and then the revival, the compression, and the trimmer is exactly the same. On this last kick mic, have a look. I am using the virtual channel this time, taking about 1.3k this time, and around about 450 hertz, and then the same compression. In fact, so we'll see how much compression we've got going off on that mic. Yeah, not so much compression going off there, around about 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction, not the same revival going off. And the trimmer, and I've got all those going to a VCA fader just for some automation, but we'll come back to that later on. On the snare, let's take the processing off. Just listen to that in solo. As you can hear, it's quite a high-pitched snare. Well, like I said, we've got the same console going off. After that, I've got a gate. What I was finding was getting a lot of bleed from the cymbals, especially on the hard crashes, and with the compression going off, it was really bringing out those crashes. Yeah, it weren't sounding good, so just added a bit of a drum gate in there from Slate. After that, using the slide virtual rack again, so a little bit more console saturation, and on the EQ just boosted a little bit at 1.6, taking a little bit out at 5.5, and just add a little bit of 240 just to bring a bit of beefiness to the snare. And after that, I've got the custom lift in there, so just to make the snare sound a little bit bigger, just add a little bit of low end in there, just a tiny amount of silkiness. And then on the second EQ, I've boosted again around about 80 hertz, and another little boost in there at 3.2, and then a little bit of a shelf boost, because with all that bottom end, the top end just needed a little bit of boosting. And then after that, I'm just using the FG Stress, which is like a distressor type compressor. Let's see how much gain reduction we're getting on that. In about 3 dB gain reduction. I could have hit that a bit harder with it being a real snare rather than a sample, but yeah, I was happy with how it was sounding, so I just left it as was. Got that revival plugging in again, just basically just adding in a load of bottom end just to beef up that snare a little bit, and a very tiny amount of shimmer, and same again, got that trimmer plug in, but wasn't really needed. Onto the toms. Now, on the toms, as you see, this is the only editing I've done. I've not edited anything else. I've not time aligned anything. All I've done is just taken all the bits out that are not needed, all the bleed, and just left the tom hits in just to clean things up a little bit. And all I'm using on there, like I say, I've got the A consoles on every channel, so I'm not going to show that on everyone. But on the toms, I'm using the AA551 from Audio Assault Channel Strip. So I'm just adding a little bit of saturation in there. Got some filters going off, so I'll cut everything out below 50 hertz and everything out above 10k. Some EQ, just taking out a little bit of 2.7k and a little bit of around about 300, and then some compression. And it's very similar, very similar settings on all three toms. So we'll just bypass the hats for now, and we'll go on to the overheads. What we've got going off on there, like I say, got the A console, and then just to add an extra little bit of saturation using the X saturator from SSL, just using the stock EQE Studio One, because there's only the hats mic'd up. All the other symbols have gone out the overheads, filtered everything out below 280 hertz. Normally, if I've got other mics, I sort of filter out everything below, say, 800 hertz to 1k. But with this sort of having any chinas and rides in there, the filter was a little bit lower. So I've just taken taken quite a bit out around about 850 hertz, just to get shut off some of the shells, and a little bit out at 525, just finding that frequency was really annoying. And then a little bit of compression just to tame those hits down on the crashes. And then on the hats, just got some EQ going off on there, filtered everything out below 350 hertz, 340 hertz, taking the top end away. That's taken care of. With the overheads, I just basically used the same frequencies. All I did was basically just copy and paste that EQ across and just altered the filters a little bit. Onto the room mics. We start off with the same A console, and then EQ-wise, I've filtered everything out below 90 hertz, 100 hertz, and been quite aggressive with the high cut as well, because there's quite a lot of cymbal bleed in these room mics. And then I put a shelf in as well, so I wanted to try and eliminate some of the cymbal bleed in there, and just dipped a little bit out at 550 hertz, and then added some compression in after that. So we'll see how much gain reduction we get in there. So only up to about -3. I've been very subtle compression in there. And as you can see, I've hard panned the room and overheads and the hats. So all the shells are going to a drums submix. And on the submix, for compression, for sort of parallel compression, I'm using the 2Co. So I've got it to about 40% wet, a little bit of drive, and then these are my compression settings. So let's have a look, see how much gain reduction we get on that. Yeah, not one super heavy-handed on the gain reduction. So I've just around about 3 dB of gain reduction. After that, just a little bit of EQ, just filtered everything out below 37 hertz, everything out above 10k, and just notched a couple of little annoying frequencies in there. And then after that, I was using a bit of tape emulation. And did I use the clipper? No, didn't use the clipper. Right, and then just to add a little bit of beefiness to the, rather than just add a bit of beefiness to the kick, I want to add a little bit of beefiness to the whole kit. This is the low control from Black Salt Audio. I've only recently got this, so without that on, the kit sounds like this. And then with it on, just adding a subtle amount of low end, just add that little bit of extra punch to the low end, because I was just missing out on a little bit of punch on that low end. So I just added this in, and I was happy with that. And then I've got this going off to drum distortion, which I'm using a head crusher from Audio Assault on there, and then just some high and low pass filters. That was it. And then the snares and the toms I've got going off to a reverb effects channel, and I'm just using the Verb Core from Ugretown. It's just a inbuilt preset, and then just filtering everything out above 10k. And then everything is going to a drum stem, which, like I say, I've got the A console on there, and then I've got this 1073 emulation, just to take a little bit of that nasty honky mid-range out, just a little tiny amount of bottom end and tiny amount of top end. And the only bit of automation I've got on the drums is the kicks. And rather than doing automation on the individual tracks, what I did was put all 3 kick mics going through this one VCA fader, because what I was finding when the double bass parts were kicking in, a lot of low-end rumble, and that was even before I put the low control on. So just to tame that low end down a bit, I just brought the kicks down by 1 dB via the VCA fader, like I say, rather than doing individual automation on the kicks. So that's the drums done. So let's have a look at the bass. So bass, we've got 2 tracks here. We've got a bass amp and a bass DI. So the bass amp, without any processing, sounds like this. So that's the bass amp. The bass DI, yep, it's just a bass DI track. There is a little bit of saturation in there, whether that's because we're using any sort of pedal, or whether that's because it's going through a console and a tape, I don't know. So on the bass amp, got the A console, little bit of EQ, just filtering out everything below 60 hertz, everything above about 4.5k. Yep, just boosted a little bit of 95 hertz, taking a little bit out of the lower mids and some of the upper mids. And then after that, just adding in some compression, and then just a limiter just to keep everything nice and controlled. So with all that on, the bass amp sounds like this. Yeah, still got some nice grit in there, but everything's under control. So on the bass DI track, we've got the A console, and then I followed that up with the bass knob from Bogren Digital, just to add some extra grit to it. And to make it sound nasty. And then after that, with it being the grittier bass sound, all I'm focusing this on is the mid-range. So I've got everything filtered out below 220 hertz and everything, I think about 3.5k or 3k. And then some compression after that. Been quite heavy adding on the compression there, but yeah, I like how it's sounding. And then just some limiting, just to keep everything under control. And then together, they sound like this. And then we've got that going to a bass submix, just done a little bit more processing on there, just add a little bit of saturation, just put some filters in, and just taking a little bit out of the mid-range, around about 260, 270 hertz, added a little bit of compression. So with that on, it sounds like this. And then did I have anything on the stem? No, nothing on the stem. So that could have just gone straight to the 2-bus. Right, everybody's favourite part, guitars. So let's take all the processing I've got off on the guitars. Right, so from what I can gather, the guitarists used a crate amp, a solid state crate amp, and I think a crate 4x12 as well. And it's definitely got that sort of 90s scooped mid sound to it, mid cut sound to that mid scooped sound. As you can, it's got that mid scoop sound to it. All I've got on the actual individual tracks is the A console. So all the processing is done on the guitar submix. So first off, wanted that to keep that old school vibe going off on here. So I've used an analog style EQ. I've got the core EQ up from Kit plugins. So I've filtered everything out below 100 hertz, everything out above 10k, and just notching out that sort of nasty mid-range, onky mid-range, even though this is quite a scooped sound anyway. There was still a lot of that 500 sort of hertz range that was still a bit muddy. And then notched a little bit out at 1.7k. I was finding that was quite annoying. And then just put a bit of a boost in there at 16k, but I'm not sure that's really doing a lot. So I was still finding the guitars were sounding a little bit muddy, so I just added this API style EQ from Aurora DSP. So I've just taken out a little bit of 125, a little bit of 250 hertz out there, just a tiny amount. And then after that, got the C4 multiband in there doing the Andy Sneak trick. Now, I did try it with sort of pull technique. I wasn't quite happy with that, how it was sounding, so I didn't bother with that. So with the processing on, this is how the guitars turn out. Yeah. I wanted to keep that sort of 90s vibe to the track, so I kept everything sort of pretty simple. And I have got some automation on this second guitar. Now, I could have done this a couple of different ways. I decided to go with automation. I just decided to automate some of the parts where there was silence. I could have just cut them out, but I thought, you know what, I'll just put some automation on. Of course, let's just bring that on. Let me just take the automation off a second. We've soloed the second guitar out, so without the automation on, you're getting the boost from the amp. And you just hear where he's tried to mute the strings. And yeah, it was coming through and it was sounding a bit nasty. So I mean, I could have just, cut and taken that bit out, but I thought I'd do it with some automation. And yeah, just done it here and there where it was just annoying me a little bit. Well, let's take that display off. So that is all the processing I did on the guitars. There's no lead guitars in this, so no need for any other effects on there. So after that, let's have a look at the vocals. So on the vocals, we've got 3 vocal tracks here. Let's listen. We've got main vocal.
Filled with fear, you tried to escape, but you've been betrayed from the ones that you trusted.
And then we've got this second vocal, which just kicks in every now and again.
From the one that you trusted, the perfect fire stars get damned.
Just got that sort of Jeff Walker carcass style to it. And then at the end, we've got a third vocal.
Oh, you love you know it.
Which has sort of got a bit of a lo-fi sound to it. So let's just mute them again. So the processing on the vocals is basically the same throughout, apart from odd little bits here and there. On the main vocal, we've got the A console. Following that, we've even though I know this was put into a console. This is basically my vocal chain anyway. So I've got it going through compressor. I should get around about 6 dB of compression, just some light compression. Bit of EQ in there. So I've filtered everything out below 140 hertz. Just put a little bit of a shelf in there just to tame that sort of lower mids. Got a bit of an annoying frequency there in that sort of mid range. And then just boosted a little bit of top end on the main vocal since it was a low guttural vocal. I just decided to add a little bit of a shelf in there. And then I've got a second compressor in there just to keep things nice and even. And then a little bit of de-essing going off with the Zool from my Ugritone, and then just to keep everything nice and under control, we've got the Loudmax limiter in there. And then, like I said, it's basically the same processing across all three, except on this second vocal, with it being a little bit more of that gargly sort of Jeff Walker top end. We've done the opposite shelf. I've just sort of tamed that top end down a little bit, but everything else is the same on there. But on this third vocal, let's just bring that up again. Instead of having the Arvox, I've sort of treated this a little bit differently. I've just added some extra distortion in there via the TSC bass audio. I've just done the filtering a little bit differently. I've just taken the low cut at 180 and the high cut at 480, just to give it a bit more of a filter sound. But apart from that, everything's the same. On that third vocal, it sounds a bit like this. And it's just a bit lower down in the mix to the other two vocals, and then all of them are going off to a vocal submix, which all I've got there is just a tiny little amount of EQ again, just in that mid-range, just to clean things up a bit. As you see, we've got some sends going off. So on the main vocal, I've called it a slapback, but it's not really slapback delay. I've just got it going back to this multi-tap delay from P&M. I've got it set to half notes. I was just trying this one out. It sounded good, so I just left it as it was. And then just EQ'd out the top end of that. The next send is going to this Vox distortion. Rather than adding saturation on the actual track itself, sometimes what I'll do, especially with guttural vocals, I'll send it out to a Vox distortion, and all I'll use on there is some type of Stompbox plugin. This time I was using the Demon Fuzz from JST, and on its own it sounds a bit like this.
To your knees, stop your crying. There's no effect on me.
And that's just blended in with the main vocal.
Is what you will become. Now die to be left apart.
Just to add some extra harmonics to the guttural vocals. It's a trick I do every now and again, mainly guttural vocals. And then just, like I say, just put a filter in there just to get rid of the top end shrill. On the second vocals, I've got this going to vocal delay, which on there I've just got the Waves super tap on there, quarter note delays, and just separated each side a little bit. And then same again with that EQ, but instead of panning the second vocal out, I've got it going to what I've called a width delay. And what I'm using on here is pitch shifter. So on the left hand side I've pitched it down a little bit, and then pitched the right hand side up. So it's acting like a bit of a panning, so it just separates that second vocal a bit from the main vocal. And then automation, we've just got it going off on the main vocal. We've got no volume automation going off, but what we have going off is some delay throws, and that's going to the same delay that the second vocal is going to. So let's just find one there.
The board!
But in the context of the mix, you can just hear it in the background.
The board!
I just got this main vocal solo just to put these delay throws in. I came across this little bit and I decided to leave it in. I don't know if anybody else that's mixed this noticed this.
Damn it!
Oh, I just thought it was funny. But I left it in. I didn't automate it out. I left it in. I thought it sounded. I thought, yeah, go on, we'll leave that in. Back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, in my old band, when we recorded our demo, one of the takes that the vocalist did, we could hear this noise right in the background. When we soloed it out, it was in with, oh, for fuck's sake, I fucked that up. So, on our copies of the demo, we've got that left in. So, yep, that's everything on the individual tracks and the submixers and the little stems. So, on the master bus, master fader, or the tool bus, whatever you want to call it, got that A console there, but I've got it on the bus module version. I'm going to do a video on this at some point when I've dove into it a little bit more. All I did on this was just add a little bit. I just felt the guitars were a little bit low in the mix, so I've just brought them up a little bit. Like I say, I've just got the mix bus going in, just add a little bit more saturation, and then I've got the SSL bus compressor, and let's have a look, see how much gain reduction that's giving us.
Will you stop moving? Get you the slice still or die?
Yeah, around about 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. Bit of tape emulation in there as well, using that same Slate virtual tape. It's one of my favourite ones. I've got a couple others, but yeah, this is one I tend to generally use. And then just got a tiny amount of EQ in there. Now, I put this shelf in before I'd even put the low control in on the kit, on the kit. I wouldn't say kick them, but kit. I was just feeling there was a bit build up on that low end, so I've just put a little bit of a shelf in there, around about 130 hertz, and then just taking a little bit out around about 400 hertz, 390, 400 hertz, just a little bit of muddiness in that mid range. I have got some automation going off on the master fader, and all I've done is on certain elements I've just boosted up, so when the main song kicks in I've just put a 1 dB boost in there, and when everything kicks back in again after certain bits of silence, I've just put another 1 dB boost in there, but staggered it down to half a dB and then back to 0. So you get that initial boost, but then it's not suddenly going back down to 0. It's a bit more transparent, if you will. And then while I was mixing it, I did have a limiter on, but for mastering, I've got ozone up in there. So on there, all I've got is a little bit of multi-band compression. So let's see what gain reductions we're getting in there.
If you don't get your music, you can't make what.
And you'll see how much gain reduction we're getting on the meters at the bottom here. It's mainly focused on this mid-range. Yeah, as you see, just some light compression in there, multi-band compression, just to smooth things off. It's a very transparent compressor, that one. After that, just decided to use the exciter on the retro setting, so I've got it around about 38-40% and around about 4.5 amount in there. So let's have a listen. So without that exciter,
Damn it, will you stop moving?
just adding a little back. I mean, I could have really pushed that up a little bit more just to give it a bit more of a modern feel. Yeah, I was happy with how it was sounding. And then just using the maximizers just to boost the volume up. So I've got the ceiling set at minus 0.01, so it's not going to clip. A little bit of character in there and some dithering in there too. If you've not seen the original video, I'll put the full mix up here. You can see how the full mix sounds.
Stop your crying. There's no effect from indeed. It is what you will become. They'll die to be left the blood. You will die. I will make sure that it's with pain. Treasure your very life. It's about to be escape, but you've been betrayed from the ones that you trusted. The perfect revenge for your soul to kill. You're already dead. You deserve that I myself will kill. I spare you to life. Your guilt of sin will be forgiven.
So, there you go. There's some 90s death metal I've mixed up. Like I say, this is part of a competition through Rate My Mix. By the time I put this video up, I'm not sure if the competition will have finished or not, but I might put a link into the website if you want to have a go with this yourself. My main idea behind this was to keep everything sort of in that 90s vibe, in that 90s groove. Yeah, with a little bit of polish, but sort of still keep that rawness, that 90s rawness to it. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It took me sort of two and a bit days to do the full mix. I mean, it weren't 2 full days. It was like a few hours here and there. I think I did about 3 or 4 hours on the first day and sort of just a couple of hours on the second day, and then just some tweaking right on the third day when I came back to the mix after I'd left it a day, just to come back with some fresh ears, and just added some little tweaks in here and there. the recording this video, the competition is still open, so no winners have been announced. I doubt I'll be one of the winners, but you never know. But like I say, I'm quite happy with this mix, how it's turned out. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. And if you want to grab yourself some Evil Wizard merch,
there's a link to the merch store down in the description.
But that's all from me, folks.
I will catch you in the next one.
Right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that video. You can follow me on social media and you can get my music online. And if you want to support the channel, there's Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal links. They're all down in the description. Click up here to subscribe and click the link down there for videos that you may not have seen. Keep it loud and keep it heavy.